Once upon a time, in a peaceful little village nestled between rolling green hills, there lived a humble farmer named Raghav. He owned a small piece of land, a modest cottage, and a few animals that helped him with his daily chores. Among them was an old donkey named Balu. Once young and strong, Balu had carried heavy loads across the farm, helped plough fields, and followed Raghav faithfully for years. But time had taken its toll. Balu's back had begun to arch. His steps were slower and his once mighty strength had faded. Realizing that Balu was no longer as useful, Raghav allowed him to roam freely. Instead of carrying burdens, Balu spent his days lazily grazing in the open fields, basking under the sun and resting beneath the shade of the large banyan tree. He had earned this peace after years of hard work. One fateful afternoon, while wandering beyond the farm's boundary, Balu's hooves slipped on loose soil, and before he could react, he tumbled down into an old, abandoned well. The fall was deep, and the walls of the well were steep and narrow. Balu brayed loudly, his voice echoing in the empty space. Fear gripped him as he struggled to find a way out, but the more he moved, the more he realized there was no escape. His cries grew louder, filled with despair, and soon caught the attention of a passerby, Raghav's neighbor, Mohan.
Raghav, your donkey has fallen into a well. You must come quickly.
Alarmed, Raghav dropped his tools and ran toward the well, gathering a few villagers along the way. When they arrived, they saw Balu looking up at them with pleading eyes. His body was covered in dust and his breathing was heavy. The villagers, out of kindness, tried to think of a way to rescue him. Ropes were lowered, but Balu was too weak to hold on. Wooden planks were dropped in, but they failed to create a stable surface. The villagers debated ideas, but nothing seemed to work. Hours passed, and Raghav, exhausted and heartbroken, made a painful decision.
He's old. Even if we manage to pull him out, he won't be of much use. It's better to let him go.
The villagers were taken aback, but reluctantly nodded. They picked up shovels and one by one began throwing dirt into the well. The plan was to bury Balu, giving him a quick and painless end. As the first pile of dirt landed on Balu's back, the donkey shuddered. Realizing what was happening, he let out a mournful cry, but the villagers continued. He panicked as more soil rained down, threatening to trap him forever. Then something clicked in Balu's mind. A spark of resilience flickered in his heart. Instead of succumbing to fear, he did something incredible. Each time dirt fell on his back, he shook it off. Instead of letting it bury him, he stepped on it. With every shovel of soil, he rose a little higher. The villagers, too focused on their task, didn't notice at first. But slowly the sound of desperate braying was replaced by the rhythmic thud of hooves pressing against packed dirt. Hours passed. Then suddenly Raghav, who had turned away in sadness, heard a sound, a rustling followed by a firm thump. He turned to look and gasped in shock. The villagers followed his gaze, and their eyes widened in disbelief. Balu had risen. With one final determined leap, he climbed over the edge of the well and landed safely on solid ground. He stood tall, his fur covered in dust, but his eyes gleaming with triumph. He looked at Raghav, but there was no longing in his gaze, only realization. He'd been left to perish, but he had saved himself. With a deep breath, Balu turned away and trotted toward the open fields, never looking back. The villagers stood in silence, struck by what they had just witnessed. Raghav, too, felt a wave of emotions wash over him. Guilt, awe, and a newfound understanding. He had underestimated Balu, thinking his time was over, but Balu had proved him wrong. The moral of the story: life will throw dirt at you. It will try to bury you with hardships, struggles, and despair. People may give up on you, but it is up to you to shake off the dirt and rise above it. Every challenge you face can either trap you or elevate you. It all depends on how you respond. Balu's story teaches us the power of resilience. Instead of waiting for help, he found a way to help himself. He teaches us that no matter how hopeless the situation seems, there is always a way out if we refuse to give up. He also teaches us self-worth. Just because someone no longer sees value in us does not mean we are worth. Our worth is determined by our actions, not by others' opinions. So the next time life throws obstacles your way, remember Balu. Shake off the dirt, step on it, and rise higher than ever before.